Welcome back to Honest Tool Reviews. Today I have not so much a tool as a life-saving device. I have it on good faith that a lot of people have never had to use this, and a lot of more may never need to use this, but I want to do a small video anyway, just in case you're one of the people who go out in the backyard, um, the wilderness, the outback, mountain biking, hiking, canoeing, kayaking, camping, actually out there in the backpack, not, you know, 12-second run to the fence and back kind of backyard, more like horseback riding in one direction for an hour and a half kind of backyard, kind of the outback of. Yeah, there's a number of ways to word it, but way out there. Okay, so here's a product. Let's see if I can find. There it is. Yep. Okay, because I'm just so organized today. I'm not, but here we are. So this is a YouTube video that failed so horribly at uploading the 4 times I tried to upload it a couple of weeks ago that I ended up just deleting it because I wasn't sure what's wrong with the file. So this is a re-review or redoing review of the Orion or Orion. Orion? Looks like it says Orion. Orion? Orion? 12 gauge, single shot, flare gun. Flare pistol. Now, this is not a handgun. This is not a pistol. This is not a revolver. This is not a firearm. It shoots a flare that you load in very carefully, and then you set it off. You pull back the hammer and you fire. What that looks like without this, just imagine it was still in there. It's not. You can tell that it's not. I can tell that it's not. Is you pull back the hammer, you put the finger here, you fire. Now, a lot of these have been horrifically modified to have a 12 gauge size pipe that shoots 12 gauge shot shells. And this became a lower for those pipes to where you can install and shoot 12 gauge shells, and that can be a very big crime, very big issue, very big no-brainer. So don't do that. I'm telling you not to do that. I don't have one. This is not me using reverse psychology. It's always a bad idea. It's plastic parts, people. It's plastic parts. Even if you're going to do something that the government doesn't know about, definitely don't use plastic parts, okay? These aren't even high performance plastic. The casing for this is pure plastic, and it doesn't shoot a 12 gauge round. This is just a 12 gauge cylinder that holds a flare, and the flare seems to have oxygen tablets amongst the burning things, because I have shot this into a pond testing these. I had 30 or 40 at one point in time, and I shot them for a number of uses. I even shot them out of 12 gauge single shot shotgun because they are 12 gauge, but they're not as nice out of a 12 gauge as a Dragon's Breath 12 gauge shot shell. These are just emergency flares, and wherever you shoot them from isn't necessarily the point. So I guess the advertisement is more, the review is more on the shell than the gun, because if you're going hunting and you're going hunting with the 12 gauge, you could very easily just pack a few of these and just keep going with the one gun. But for everyone else, I do highly suggest one of these. Why do I suggest one of these? Well, it is a flare, and these flares are lightweight. It's not going to weigh you down to have 3 of these and 1 of these. As a matter of fact, when you put one in and shoot it, it goes remarkably high up into the sky, so people can see over the tree line that a flare has been shot. I do recommend more than two, because if you shoot one, people may not see it. And if you shoot two, people might see it, but it may come down before people figure out where you're at. And so what I would do is just every hour I would shoot a second one, and then my third one. If I had 10, I might would take all 10, because your life is worth that, right? Um, so what is this for? Why is it a handgun and not a big bulky item? It's because it's supposed to be portable. People typically keep one of these in their boats. A lot of boats, when you sell these boats or buy these boats, you're going to find one of these in the boat because people have forgotten about them. They are in there with a small emergency kit that just gets shoved under the bow, and it's just there. And you're just digging, looking at stuff, cleaning things out, getting the spider webs out, and you pull one of these out, and you're like, holy fuck. Well, this is what we're reviewing. For people who've never considered these things because they look at the bright orange and see them as a children's toy, this is your wake-up call. This is not a children's toy. Don't buy these for your children. Don't overlook these when you're buying camping supplies. This is legal, as far as I know, when you go camping, anywhere you go camping. This is not going to get you arrested like a firearm. Now, I know I'm supposed to say, use at your own discretion, and I'm not a lawyer, and I can't tell you what to do. So I'm going to tell you that, of course. But what I can tell you is that my parents went camping for a long, long time. We went to regular RV camps. I went tent camping. I've been hiking in the woods. I've done all three, and I've carried these. And no one's ever said jack shit. Matter of fact, when I was camping with my parents, I was actually under the age of 18, and I typically had one of these. And not only did my super strict parents, who didn't want me to have a bow or a firearm, let me have this, because back then children weren't the pussies that they are now. It was seen as a good idea for me to have this if I was going to walk out in the woods where a bear might be, because if I ran up a tree to get away from a bear, I could signal for help, because I might not have a cell signal. A cell phone might not be helpful. And I was also told by my dad, who was semi-badass, that if I had any continence, my second shot would be down into the bear's face. I can't tell you to do that because California is on fire and Canada is on fire. Seems like all of the liberal places are the ones that are on fire. Huh. That's a different thought. That is a completely different thought. This could be used offensively or defensively, and I will tell you something that I did that I'm not proud of. You're not really supposed to divulge your past on the internet, but this is a legal matter that has extended past the legal amount of time to be charged with it. And it was made known to a sheriff, a police officer, and the magistrate. So I am highly confident that at this point there should be no consequences for telling the truth about something that happened more than 10 years ago. As I get older, things become a lot easier to talk about. So we're going to go down a little trip down memory lane. You could pass through this if you're not the least bit interested what stupid shit I've done. But here we go. I was living with an ex-girlfriend, and me and her were living with her grandparents because she had nowhere to go, and I was hoping to get the money up to get us a place to stay. The place that I had been staying, my toolbox fell through the floor because it's a really bad trailer. It wasn't my trailer. I was renting it. They had no intentions of fixing it, and there was nowhere to go from there. So the grandparents were nice enough to let me move in, and it had ran its course. I was moving out. My girlfriend had made it clear that she didn't care about saving money. She didn't care about getting a better car or putting finances aside for the future. She just wanted a baby. And she figured that while she was there with her grandparents was the best time to have one. And because I said no, I don't want a baby out of wedlock when we don't have money and aren't prepared for one, I could hit the road. So I was doing so. As I was doing so, I was called numerous things by this drunk guy over the phone who calls himself her father. Now, this father of hers, he was not the nicest guy when he was sober, but he was also not the nicest guy when he was drunk. Matter of fact, it probably just made it worse. I never saw him when he was sober, so I wouldn't know. He just seemed to be perpetually drunk. Reminded me of my biological father, whom I've never really met. Didn't need to, but this particular situation, I was packing up things from a farm house, a farm barn, I guess. It has an upstairs where they used to dry tobacco, and it has this rickety little 2 foot wide stairs creaking down the front of the building so that you could get stuff down to your vehicle or up to the shed, the up top part, and back and forth and whatever. And I was going up and down getting things, and it was really bad timing. If you really think about it, it was bad timing for him and bad timing for me. But he showed up. He showed up, and he was drunk with a firearm, which I believe that's if not a felony, a really high up on the list crime. Um, and since he was drunk and driving a motorcycle, his only vehicle, because he's just that unprepared drunk piece of shit. It's not that he had multiple vehicles and one stopped running at the moment. It's not that he had a vehicle and someone had hit him and now he's trying to get another one. It's for more than 10 years, all he ever wanted was this one motorcycle that he had. And that was all he needed and all he cared about was drinking and staring at his motorcycle. So he was illegally, drunkenly operating a motor vehicle and in possession of a gun he should not be in possession with, which I also believe was probably not his based on the stories that I've heard about his past. Well, here's the thing. He came up that stairs after me and was fussing. And he fussed me all the way back down the stairs as I put stuff into my vehicle. I forget what it was I was driving at the time, but I was putting stuff in it. And his mouth got worse and worse and worse. And I wasn't Norse pagan at the time. I wasn't heavily violent. I was a bit of a pacifist. I wasn't scared of him by any means, but I was always taught by my parents to not throw the first punch, be the bigger man, turn your cheek because Jesus would. And in my mind, he was drunk. He didn't know what he was talking about. He was going to get bored with me. He was going to leave me alone. He did not. He escalated from cussing to hitting me. He escalated from hitting me to kicking at my ankles while I'm trying to put the boxes into my vehicle. To the point that on the way down the stairs at one point, he just about tripped me off the stairs. And, box in my hand could have been pretty bad. I have one last box. And this is not the correct 12 gauge shell. And I will not load it on screen because I feel like YouTube will have a problem with that. But let's just say that this does fit just enough. Actually, it doesn't fit. That's funny. It wasn't. Okay, yeah, that. That's actually really interesting. I mean, I'm glad, but that is really interesting stuff. Huh. Okay, so let's just say that there was a 12 gauge in the box and an emergency flare in the box, because at that time I did not have. It's empty. Didn't load it. It's empty. I didn't have a full armory. I had like two 12 gauges, a handgun, and a pile of 12 gauge stuff. And this was just in the 12 gauge stuff. And this was just in the 12 gauge stuff. Because there was just nowhere else to categorize these things. Anywho. With that last box, he had already, been kicking at my feet. He decked me in the face a few times. He decked me in the back of the head a few times. He'd pushed me a few times. And all the while holding a firearm, intimidating me about as bad as he can intimidate me. And he swung the firearm onto his back. And he stopped at the bottom of the stairs. And I've now walked to the top of the stairs thinking, oh, all right, he's done. As I turn around, he's coming up the stairs. And at this he's coming up the stairs moment, he's coming up the stairs not with the firearm, but with a golf club that's mine, that was laying with my golf club stuff that was in my vehicle. So he had stolen my golf club. It was a driver, a green driver. Matter of fact, I believe it was a Callaway. Not that it matters. And he was rushing up the stairs saying that he was going to, go ahead and finish the job. And that he only needed one bullet. Well, he had one hand on the handle of the driver. One hand kind of closer to the top of it. And he was rushing up this rickety fucking thing. I remember only doing two things. In my mind, I panicked because he was saying bullet. And visually panicking because he had not rushed until now. And I went from he's going to get bored with this to he's going to escalate this. That's going to knock me off this railing, and I am going to die. He already had a firearm. He already traveled there illegally. He was making tons and tons of threats, and the physical violence was escalating. I dropped the box, seeing that this gun was in there. And I grabbed the first 12 gauge I could find, which was actually a slug. It was a high-powered slug, and this is a clean shot, but anyway, I crammed it in this, and it went snap straight in there and shut. It fit perfectly. Some of these newer ones probably don't, but it fit perfectly at the time. I believe they've probably had some issues, and that might be why they've redesigned them. I do see where they've put ridges on these now. And I'm very, very aware that you can still buy the old ones or even 3D print some of them. So don't get in the idea that every one of them are safe now. There's plenty that aren't. I shoved the whole thing in, closed it, pulled the trigger all the way back. I was fucking ready for this stupid shit. And I had my hand on the trigger. And I had my other hand back here. Because I didn't know where everything was going to go, but I was very confident that it was going to shear all of this off of me. And I shouted, "It's empty. It's empty." I shouted, "I will send us both to hell if you don't leave me the fuck alone." And I said that fully aware that there's no telling where that shrapnel was going to go. And I said it face down into his face, probably this far from his face. And he sobered up. And he sobered up quick. And he dropped the club. And he raised his hands. And it became a big to-do because her grandmother, his mother, sticks her head out the door because I've shouted, "He's got a gun to my son." First of all, your son has a gun. Second of all, your son's gun is much, much bigger. Third of all, your son has already threatened me with his gun. Fourth of all, or fifth of all, he's already started hitting me and kicking me and beating me, and he was threatening to kill me, and he had made up his mind he was gonna. So, yeah, I have a gun to your son, this adult bastard who is in no way a good adult. Okay, I don't want to hear it, but of course I had to. The man backed right on down the stairs. Moral of the story, these things can be a great deterrent even to humans. You can load a flare in it, which is not a firearm and not a bullet. And you can fire this, and it will very badly injure a human being because it is a fireball. And this fire, like I said earlier, probably has oxygen tablets in it because I fired one of these, into a lake, and under the lake, 3 feet under, you could see it glowing, still burning. And I'm sure they do that for the practical reason of if it's pouring down raining, it doesn't need to go out. And I am very thankful that they do that. Very, very thankful that they do that. That's a brilliant idea. It helps a lot, considering, if it is raining and the weather's, worse, you need to be found sooner, not later. And, that's amazing. But if it was to, shoot into your skull, the blood wouldn't put it out. It would keep burning and burning and burning and burning. So, what was I going to do? I was hoping to shoot it into his eyeball. Did I shoot it? No. It did not require me to shoot a single round. Because like Colin Noor says from his YouTube channel, most firearms prevent the need to pull the trigger by simply pulling it out and showing that you were not going to cower and be a victim. Now this is not a firearm. Not even a firearm. So you can imagine how much more effective a real firearm would have been. But true to firearm fashion, I went down to the magistrate's office to get a restraining order against him for his attempt to hurt me. And on the way there, I had called the sheriff's department to let them know he had been drunk somewhere that wasn't his house, that he had traveled there on a vehicle, and that he had direct access to and currently had possession of a firearm, and that he had assaulted me, and that he had threatened me, and that he had verbally assaulted me. And what I did about that was, to do these two things. Well, the sheriff's department over the phone told me, okay, so we'll go check that out, and then urged me to go to the magistrate's office, which I was already going to. The magistrate's office told me very quickly, we can't just do this. If you want to file charges, he can too. So charges were started, and then he filed charges against me. And then I agreed to drop my charges only if he dropped his charges. And the charges were dropped. Now, I don't know any further. I did speak with a police officer that may or may not have been a friend of his, may or may not have just not liked me. The truth can be very muddied through just time. So I don't know exactly what the right answer to tell you that happened with the other information. I do know they sent a sheriff to the house. I do know that he was no longer there. I do know that I gave them his address, and I do know that he went. I don't remember what became of that. I imagine he was smart enough to get rid of the gun, or hide the gun and pretend he didn't have the gun. And if the gun wasn't in his name, it would be very hard to prove that there was one on the premises at all. And I imagine that's the truth because he was an extremely reckless, violent person for his entire life. So I have a hard time believing he was easily able to get a gun legally. Therefore, registered with paperwork that could be found to say, well, we know you have a gun here, yada yada. So I imagine he got away with it. But the other end of it was he was most definitely drunk driving. And in numerous years, more than 10 years now, I have not seen hide nor hair of him, not tail end or anything else. And he's either died from drunk driving and doing these reckless, stupid redneck things, or he's in jail for, the drunk driving and illegal possession of a firearm and yada 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 yada. I can't hold a good conversation with the ex-girlfriend for anything. All she wanted was children, and I was just such a terrible monster for not being ready to give up any hope of saving money or being a better provider to drop at the drop of a hat and make a family when I wasn't prepared and didn't have a home to give these children. So I would never reach out and find out. But I do genuinely owe my life to one of these Orion flare guns. And this is not the same one. This one, in fact, only fits flares. I was able to make a shell fit in here a while ago, but I can't go into big details on how or why or anything else. I did not modify it. That was not necessary. I can't give you any kind of information because those forms of information could be used to make the argument that I'm making the suggestion that you do turn this into a 12 gauge ghost gun, and I highly suggest that you don't. So I won't tell you how to put a shotgun shell in this barrel, although the older ones you just push it in there and it fits. I would also argue that that information is null and void because if you put a big metal pipe here anyway, you don't really need the orange barrel. So this information, I just don't feel the need to divulge all of these things. At the time, I used the older model, which I just assumed that even though you could put 12 gauge in here, no one had thought about it. And they just went with a 12 gauge shell size because it was a good size for a flare. And looking back, I think maybe they realized there was an oopsie, so now you only have this size. And you can see they scale it down about halfway for safety reasons and to prevent you from doing things like that. But if you get your hands on an old one, you can get a good bluff if your life is absolutely in danger. If you pull that trigger, there is legitimately no telling what will happen if there's a 12 gauge shell in there. But all I needed to happen was for something to come forward at that man's face. And that's why I did what I did. I was genuinely terrified. I wasn't thinking logically. I had not planned it. If I'd planned it, I'd have had something better. And I didn't. This was going to hurt me. And this was going to hurt me bad. But it was bad or die. So I chose bad. So I owe my life to one of these, and I have great respect for these. And I keep one to this day. This one has been on my computer desk for the longest time. Even before I've moved the last 3 or 4 times, it was always out in the open except when I record, because it is a testament to me that life goes on. The orange signals emergency or warning or caution. And I try to exercise some caution on the daily. I try to be careful when I drive. I try to be careful when I work. So the gun for me actually has a very deep meaning. And if I had to sell all of my firearms, I would still make the argument that this is not a firearm. This is not black powder. This is not a weapon. I didn't have to sign any paperwork to buy it. It was like $60. At the time, it was $60 for one of these and two 5 packs of these. Now I think just the gun is $60. But it's a very useful tool. I've been mountain biking. I've kept this and 3 of these in the bag. I've been hiking. I've kept this and 6 or 7 in the bag. I've been kayaking. I kept this and about 12 in the bag. I've been camping. I've kept this and about 6 in the bag. I've been cross country. I've kept this and about 12 in the bag. And when a police officer has pulled me over and said, "Is there any firearms in the car?" I've told them no, because there wasn't. Then I would say, "There is a emergency flare gun." And they just roll their eyes and go, "Okay, yeah." So anyway, so this is why I pulled you over. So I can't give you any legal advice, but I'm telling you what I did and how handy these have been for me. There may be another one around here, just because I don't know if I got rid of the original one after thinking about what I did and being ashamed of it, or if maybe I had got broken or something from the move. I don't know. I really don't. But I know there's this one, and I know that right this minute I can still shove a 12 gauge shot shell in here. They didn't think about all of the ways that shotgun shells and stuff go together. And single shot shotguns can typically shoot these as well. So it's really more of a testament to these being useful for life-saving emergencies, and this just being the apparatus that starts it and sends it off. But for me, this was what saved my life, and this is a proponent. They go together. Matter of fact, typically there's a piece that it sits on the back and has the flares on it. And I've never quite understood that, because that thing, it doesn't really stay there very well, and I don't know, they could do so much better with 3D printing. But I'm just rambling, and with this rambling, I'm not accomplishing anything. So just know that this, it burns underwater, and it has a good hour or so burn time. And they fly really high in the sky, so they can be seen by helicopter, by people on the other side of trees and buildings. And they're lightweight. They're really not heavy. I mean, I might would say that this full-size shotgun shell, flare gun shotgun shell, is potentially lighter than this small birdshot mini shot. And the handgun is probably no heavier either. So it's not going to be a bad idea to put one in a backpack and carry it with you. And there's no background check for this. There's no signing waivers for this. At least it wasn't when I bought this one, which is probably the second one I've ever bought. But they're in the hunting section, they're in the survival section, they're in the camping section, they're in the fishing section, they're in the saltwater section, because they make great emergency flare guns. I mean, there's not even that many brands either. Like, this is the thing bar none, and no one looks at these and goes, "Oh, is that a so and so?" No. This is Orion. There is a green one that I've seen. I don't know why it was green. I couldn't get my hands on it. I was busy. I saw it at a store. I don't know what store. I don't know why it was green. I don't even know if it was plastic. It could have been a metal firearm. But this is a plastic orange flare gun. And I assumed that it was different, but it could have been the same thing. It could have been a different brand. But I give these a 5 out of 5. I've shot them a number of times. One of the uses that may not necessarily be the nicest thing, the liberals would throw a fit, was I went to a friend's house one time, and they had this just massive pile of trash from a rental person or persons that had lived in a house numerous times, and they moved out, and people had been piling their trash out there in this open field for just years. There was all kinds of furniture, numerous ones, 5 or 6 sofas, 7 or 8 recliners, kitchen tables, kitchen chairs, trash bag, trash bag, trash bag, just piled, absolute mountain. Taller, maybe even taller than the house potentially. Um, and I know that the reason why it was is because they had paid an excavator to kind of push things together 2 or 3 times throughout the years. And at this point, they were officially celebrating selling the house to another couple who were friends of mine that had just met these people. And I had spent the night, and now there was plenty of people drinking, but I don't drink. But, it's America. People do what they want to do. And they were going to drink. And because they were going to drink, even though the fire department had showed up to help them burn this thing, they did not want to light it because of all the gasoline that had been put on this thing all over. They're just like, I'm too drunk to run. This is going to be a big fire. It's going to hurt somebody. We're all too drunk. Maybe we shouldn't light this. And I said, well, is anybody going to get close to it if it was lit? And I was told, no, 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 no. Most people are going to stand right here, right around the yard, right where the beer cooler is, and that's it. So I loaded one of these from my car, put it in, and I stood back a third of a football field and snapped it in and shot it off directly about, I was aiming about midway of the trash mountain, and it landed not too far from the base, kind of high, not low. It landed up the base some, and it lit. I mean, there was probably 20 gallons of gasoline on this thing. It fucking lit. And when it lit, it burnt that trash, and it burnt that trash good, and nobody got hurt. Nobody got hurt. So me having this either prevented the fire department from wasting their time and costing someone hundreds of thousands of dollars to have everything moved with probably an environmental protection agency or something, to going ahead and getting it burnt like everyone had already decided and agreed upon. And that, I guess you could say, this saved a bunch of people's day, whereas it also saved my life. And I take it when I go fishing every time, just in case. And I have scared a snake away with it. I shot one at a snake that did not seem to want to go away. And I did not hit the snake. God forbid. I mean, I tried. But the snake did run off when the fire was present and the loud boom. So I can equate that to, pest control. And yes, it was a fire in a bunch of green wet grass. So didn't actually cause a spread of fire or anything. And I was there fishing for a good while, and when it finally went out, it was okay for me to leave, so I left then. I was sure to be a good, responsible person and make sure there wasn't a big wildfire. There was no problems. I mean, at least for us North Carolinians, we know how to prevent a fire. I don't know about those Californians or Canadians, but we know how to prevent a fire. We've been listening to Smokey for a long time. Um, so I give this a 5 out of 5 and a 5 out of 5 with this too. I give it to them individually because you can buy them individually, and I give it to them individually because you can use them individually. Although I highly suggest only using this with this. My situation is very rare and highly unlikely to come up again in my lifetime, but it's probably the reason that I'm here now. So, as a survival tool and not a firearm, I do suggest these both, 5 out of 5. The Orion 12 gauge emergency flare gun and the Orion 12 gauge emergency flares. Let's see, there is writing on here, but it's starting to age. I can't even read it. It's just, I'm aware that there's writing on here, I just can't read it. That concludes this particular review. And I apologize if the ranting and raving about what was going on in my past was either unhelpful uninteresting or just sounded stupid, but that's what happened to me, and that's how I dealt with it. And yes, the sheriff was called, and yes, I talked with the magistrate, and the police office was there, and I ended up not pressing charges, but I haven't seen the guy since. And I don't wish him well, but I don't wish him wrong either. I don't feel that I should. That wouldn't be good karma for my channel. I do think we can all assume that I couldn't care less what's happened to the man, but I hope that it isn't great. Because the man hasn't made a lot of good decisions, and I highly doubt he's changed his ways and started making good decisions. That said, this isn't a message to him. This is just me hoping that everyone out there does better. We can all be nicer people, more understanding people. We can all be better humans in general. And it starts with caring about yourself, caring about your future and your well being, and doing what's right for you. Not hurting other people or having children that you don't need for no damned reason. It was about doing the right thing. I turned the other cheek until there was far less cheeks to turn than two, and I still turned the other cheek for as long as I could, and that there just wasn't anything else I could do about it. So that was just that was just a conversation that I guess it had to happen because of the topic. Hopefully I'll never have to discuss it again because I haven't discussed it in years. My mom was off the rails insane when she heard about how things had went down. The father in the situation here on my side was astounded, offended, impressed, confused. Anyway, this is not to be used as a firearm. This is not to be used in self-defense, but it does make a great self-defense tool in self-preservation and defending your life from the elements, accident, a tragedy, an animal, boat sinking, tent on fire. You pick your poison, whatever the reason. It's a great idea to have one, and I cannot stress that enough. Anywho, stay safe out there. Have a great day.